so this last video dealing with this bracket is going to be creating this in 3D using AutoCAD. So I kind of work on these a lot different than other drafters or designers would do. They would typically kind of start with one slate and kind of build it around and trim and look at different faces. Well, I like to break it down into a few different things and then put them together and use my Boolean operations to create the shape, whether it's complex or not. Okay, so that's what you're going to see that I'm going to do here. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping with this one. I know there's a couple of dimensions that are missing, mainly this one. I know that is in the center of this one, but it's always nice to at least add the locations of where your holes are located at. Okay, so with that done, now I'm going to go ahead and get the two parts, or I'm going to build the pieces that I'm going to need in order to construct this. So I see that the total bottom or base of this one is constructed mainly of, and I'm just going to select these few things here. Okay, so I'm going to copy that. I'm sorry, let me copy this and the circle included. So let's go back to the copy command. Select the previous, and that's what you saw me do. I put P enter in, and that selected the previous objects that I selected. But I'm just going to select these objects, and then I'm just going to copy these along here. The other two shapes that I'm going to need is going to be this rectangle here and a rectangle located here. So I'm going to go ahead and create that using the rectangle command. And I'm just going to create the rectangle here from these two endpoints. And likewise on this side. Just going to copy these two along over there with my other piece that I have. Well, actually, I should just move these, but I'll come back and delete them. All right. And then one other piece that I'm going to need is a 60 by 60 rectangle that I'm just going to extrude up from this base. And so if we do the math on that, once again, that's going to be 35. So that distance from this height going up here is 35. And I'm going to need to create a rectangle and extrude that up at 35 when the time comes. So I'll go ahead and create that rectangle here. Place it here. And remember, those dimensions are 60, 60. Okay, now I have all the shapes that I'm going to need. Next thing we need to do is make sure that each one of these are going to be closed polylines. So you can see that the rectangles that I created, those are done with no problem. And what I mean by closed polylines is that if you select one of those rectangles or objects, all of them will light up. This one along the top are individual lines, so I'm just going to select them all. And then I'm going to go J, enter. And that J stands for join, as you've seen. But if you're an icon person, the join command is located at this location. Alright, so I want to just verify that that is a closed polyline now, and that circle, all circles are typically closed polylines. You don't have to do anything to those. Okay, so what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to create, or copy, or in this case I'm going to cut them from this drawing, and I'm going to start a new drawing. I'm going to highlight them, and then I'm going to use the Windows cut option. And that's holding down the Control X button, and those should go away. I'll click on the plus icon here to open up a new drawing. Typically, I like to turn the grid off, so I'm going to turn the grid off. And then I'll use a Control V, and I'll pick a location for it. Alright, so here's all of my points that I'm going to need, or my objects that I'm going to need. Let's go ahead and switch AutoCAD over to the 3D portion. I'm just going to do that by selecting this sprocket here, and then I'm going to go to 3D modeling. Once you click that icon, your AutoCAD should flash for a few times, and then you're going to see at the top your ribbon should change. Alright, so now I got to kind of remember some numbers here. I'm going to look at this in an isometric view, and I'm going to do that by selecting on my view cube here, this lower left corner. Once you click on that, you're going to see that your screen will kind of orient to an isometric view. Now, if I remember correctly, this one was extruded up to a height of 15. So I'm just going to use the extrude option. I'm going to select these two objects, hit the enter button, and then I'm going to drag it up in the direction that I want to go. Do not left click or anything of that nature, just drag it in the direction you want. Type in the height that you need, which is 15. And then I need to get this circle out of this one. Right now these are two shapes. And you can see those as if I change it from wireframe and I go to shades of gray, you're going to see that it does indeed have that solid cylinder stuck on the inside of it. I'm going to switch back to wireframe. And I'm going to use the 3D wireframe. Alright, so now when I go and use the Boolean operation of subtracting, I can subtract. Remember, select the object you want to keep first. So I select that, hit the enter button, and then select the object you want to subtract, which is going to be this cylinder. Nothing changes on your screen graphically, but remember, if I go back to the shades of gray, now you can see that there's a hole in between there. Let's go back and put it on wireframe. Let's go ahead and move this. And I'm just using a regular move command. I'm going to move from this endpoint to there. Use the extrude command. Select this icon, select that rectangle. Hit the enter button. I'm going up in the up direction. And remember that distance that we used should be 35 because the overall height of this thing was 50. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is I want to get these two together. We use the union command to do that, so I'll go to union. And it doesn't matter on this one which order you select them in, just select the objects that you want to union together. Alright, so now what I'm going to do next is I want to rotate these two to stand up. So I'm going to start with this one. On my move gizmo, I'm going to select the drop down, choose rotate. I'm going to choose this red axis. I'll type in 90. We're going to go ahead and put this in position. Should be at the midpoint of this one. Should be at the midpoint of that top line. So just using the regular move command. Select this rectangle. My base point is going to be from that midpoint to that midpoint. Use the extrude command. Select this rectangle. Enter. I'm going to go through that direction, so I'm just aiming and going through. As long as this rectangle goes all the way through it, doesn't matter the distance. So I'll click here, subtract, select the object I want to keep first, which is this one, enter, and then I'm going to select this rectangle that I want to subtract from it. Alright, the next one I'm going to do in two parts. I need to rotate this to stand it up, so I'm going to select it. Make sure you have nothing selected, and otherwise your rotate gizmo won't come up. And another thing is also make sure you're in anything other than 2D wireframe here underneath your visual styles. Alright, so once I do that, I have my object selected. Select the red axis. That's going to be 90. And then I'll select the blue or purple, depending on how your eyesight looks at it. I'm going to select that axis and then I'll type in 90. Use the regular move command. Select the midpoint. And sometimes it's trying to go to that parallel, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to force it to go to midpoint. I'm just going to hold down the shift button, right click, you let go of the shift button, then select midpoint. And what that's going to do is make AutoCAD only select midpoints. So I'll select that midpoint. Now I'll place it on that on that midpoint. Let's go ahead and go back to extrude. Select that rectangle. I want it to go through this direction, so once again, long as it's longer than what it's extruding through, that is fine. So the distance will be whatever that is. I'm going to subtract those from it. So I'm going to subtract. Remember, select the object you want to keep first, enter, and then select the object you want to subtract, enter. Alright, so we do have our shape, and I want to make sure that this is faced in the right direction. So remember that anytime you're creating a isometric, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of switch back to my other drawing. This is the front view, looking at it this way. This is the right side view. So once again, front view, right side view, and top view. Well, I'm going to orient my shape just so it's reflecting that. Back in this drawing, you can see the word front, which is correct. And I'm just going to swing this around. So I got the front view facing correctly, the right side view facing correctly, and the top view, of course, is facing correctly. If I click on any of those words, you're going to see that it will cycle through each one of those. And it should look really similar to my AutoCAD picture. Alright, so it is faced the correct orientation. It's already completed. Everything is great at this point. Well, I forgot one other thing. I have to put a fillet in here. But most of it is completed, and the fillet you're going to see is really super simple. I'll go to the solid command, fillet edge, radius, type in whatever that radius is, which is 10. Select the edge. So I'm going to select this line here. It kind of gives me a preview and say, hey, is that what you want to do? So I hit the enter button, and then I have to hit enter one more time to accept it. Alright, so everything now is totally completed. Let's go ahead and take a look at what this will look like in the drafting portion. So if we go ahead and click on Layout 1, select this rectangle, and I'm going to delete it. I'm going to insert in my title block, and if you remember how we did that from the first part of this one, I'm just going to use I-enter. Next I'm going to do is that I already know the size of this, but remember that we're working in paper space now. So we're going to make sure that we keep the scale set to 1 to 1 to 1 on this one. We're not going to up the size of it. It's not controlled that way. It's going to be controlled by the drawing. And our insertion point, we're going to also keep it 0, 0, 0. So I know that I have both of these two things done already. Let's go ahead and select the drop down. Then you should get a dialog box telling you which size. Just like we did with the other drawing, I'm going to use the B size. Go ahead and open. And I should have left these unchecked. I'm sorry. I actually checked them. So I'm going to type in 0, 0. Enter. And then it's asking me for a scale. In this case, it's going to be 1. Okay. Now, once you have that, and remember that anytime you do that again, you really want to have these unchecked. But go ahead and close this. In order to make the paper size match this, and I'm going to do this rather quickly. Let's see, we're going to go to the Layout tab. Click on Page Setup. Dialog box is going to appear. I'll go to Modify. DWG to PDF is the one that you're looking for. ANSI full bleed. We're looking for the B size, 17 by 11. Change this to extents. Center. 1 to 1 is fine on here. Once I hit OK, you're going to see that it will adjust and then close. Next thing I need to do is I need to go ahead and bring in my shape. And the way we're going to do that is by going to the drop down here, and then we're going to choose our image. It's going to be from model space. We're going to give it a little time, and then our image should appear next to our cursor. And this is where we're going to kind of select the views that we want. So remember that this was our front view. So I'm going to place my front view here. I'll hit the enter button. Now it's ready to create the other view. So I'll select here. I'm left clicking, by the way, and then I'll come over here and left click. And then I'll put the angle kind of going up this direction. Left click. Everything looks good. Go ahead and hit the enter button. And you can see that it will create what we created in AutoCAD rather quickly. If I need to adjust the scale of this or happen to want to know what the scale is, if I select on my first view that I brought in, and then I select this drop down, it'll tell me what view I have it as. So right now it's setting at 1 to 30. I don't have 1 to 25 loaded in. We can create that one, and maybe I should show you how to do that. But we'll take a look at that a little bit later or in another video. But for 1 to 30, this one is fine since we're not going to go through the whole thing of putting dimensions and all that back on it. I just wanted to show you how quick it was to go ahead and create those 3 views rather quickly. With this view, we can control how it looks. So I'm just going to click it. I'll go to Edit View. And now it tells me how do I want this to look. So instead of having it look with the hidden lines on it, I can have it shaded or I can just have it with the visible lines. Either one is fine. And then if I go and hit Escape twice, it looks exactly like the isometric that we created in the last video. And all the rest of the stuff, if you want to refer back to the first video, you can do that. And I can show you how to, that one explains how to fill out the title block and things of that nature. If I jump back over to the Model tab, this is where I would go to create a new scale in here. So you can see that all I did was I switched back to the Model tab. I selected the fly up next to the 1-to-1. Scroll down to where it says Custom. And every time you click on, give it a little bit, I'll come to a new one. I'll go to Add. And I'm just going to put it in just like how these other ones are. 1:25. And this one is going to be 1 as my parent unit, 25 as my other one. Go ahead and hit the OK button, and you can see that it is right between where I want it to be. If I click on the 1 to 30, you can see that's where I'm getting these numbers from, 1 to 25 and 1 to 30. Just go ahead and hit OK. You jump back to the Layout tab. I'll select here. And inside of the drop down now, you'll see that the 1 to 25 will appear. And you can see now these are the exact same size as the one that's on my other drawing. Alright, so like I said, you can always refer back to the first video if you want to do any other dimensioning and things of that nature. But you can see that you can create the drawing, or the model rather quickly. And then the drawing is nothing more than putting the views on and then going through the dimensioning. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this one, and join me on my next video when I'll come up with something new to create and hopefully for your enjoyment. Have a good one.